Friends, we have today eminent filmmaker, film personality, media personality from Sri Lanka, Mr. Nilendra Deshapriya. And Mr. Deshapriya studied drama and theatre at school, and at the age of 14, he wrote his first stage play titled The House Carriage, inspired by the film Rashomon by the legendary Akira Kurosawa, which became a huge success. He was an active member of the Group 78 at the Lionel Wade Theatre, a community where the creative elite gathered and produced many theatre productions. Nilendra Deshapriya embarked on his journey of filmmaking as an assistant director with highly reputed in both local and international productions. Later, he rose to become one of Sri Lanka's most sought-after television personalities who introduced the genre of reality TV to Sri Lankan audiences, producing many successful television formats such as Superstar, based on singing talent all over the nation, which garnered the highest ever television rating in the history of Sri Lankan television. And also the franchised version of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. We see Kaun Banega Crorepati, a franchise in India of the Who Wants to Be Millionaire. He replicated it in Sri Lanka. Thana Rati Ranga, that is Between Yesterday and Tomorrow, is his directorial debut feature film as a filmmaker. Mr. Deshapriya, I welcome you wholeheartedly. Can you hear me?
Harsh, I can hear you very loud. Go on.
Yes, yes.
Namaste.
Welcome to Indus Valley International Film Festival. And so this film, Thana Rati Ranga, which we are going to show today, I wanted to know how this idea germinated in your mind. When did you conceive this idea, and what was the inspiration?
Harsh, in fact, this film was written by two actors who are appearing in the film out of the three protagonists. So they wanted to find someone to produce this script, and they came and saw me. So when I read the script, I instantly fell in love with the narrative, because there were many movies who were made post-war Sri Lanka, and this was in 2012, and the story really touched my heart. So I thought, okay, I have been postponing forever directing a movie, because I was most sought after assistant director, I would say. So I had films coming on my way one after the other, and so finally this particular script gave me the inspiration that I should do a film, and that is how this film was made. The decision was made rather reading the script, Harsh.
Okay, and we have known that you are a big admirer and follower of Mr. Akira Kurosawa. Even the first play you wrote, The Horse Carriage, was inspired from Rashomon. What was different? What was different and special about Rashomon, especially Rashomon in Kurosawa work?
What happened is now this Horse Carriage, the drama was written when I was 14. So we were youngsters who were really with the film movement at that time, and we were watching films every evening, a film a day. So there were many cultural institutions in Sri Lanka, in Colombo, like the Goethe Institute, the British Council, the Alliance Francaise. So we were watching films from Europe, from Japan. And when I first saw the print of Rashomon way back in 1976, if I'm not mistaken, I instantly fell in love with the narrative, the way it has been told, the three different perspectives of the same incident, the same story, and I think that inspired for me to make it a stage play. So that was the story, the storytelling, the power of Kurosawa's filmmaking and his prowess in film storytelling in Rashomon really touched me.
Okay.
Harsh, are you recording this conversation from your end?
Yes, we are recording.
All right, okay. So you can share it with me because this is really inspiring, what you are doing right now with this online film festival. So I would like to retain a copy.
Sure, sir. Thanks a lot. And I've sent you the festival invitation also. You can join it as an audience. You can watch all our uh, screenings.
Certainly I will.
Okay, and we all know that you have been deeply engaged with television, especially in the form of reality shows. You brought reality show for the first time in Sri Lanka, in fact, and how making of this feature film Thana Rati Ranga came into your mind? I mean, what was trigger of this transition from television to big screen?
Harsh, I was telling you earlier, I was a professional assistant director. So I was working in cinema since I was 17. I had the privilege of working with all the top directors in Sri Lanka, and so I was an assistant director on feature films, on 35mm feature films, and television was an accident. I didn't never thought to become a media personnel or a television producer director, but when I joined television, I would say I realized that television is more or less, it's been all stagnated, and more or less all the channels have the same kind of programming bouquet in their channels. Despite the difference on the screen, the logo, every channel looks the same. And I thought, okay, I wanted to introduce a different kind of genre to take television to the next level. So from the daily soaps to news and educational programs, and from children's program, I found this genre which was doing very well at that time with American Idol in America. And also there was a similar, I would say, the franchise version of American Idol was happening at that time in India as well, as Indian Idol. So that is the inspiration behind to produce this program, and the Silver Superstar, which became a phenomenon in Sri Lanka. But the transition from television to film was always there. Like, it was, I'm the one who was suppressing the need for me to, make a film. That was there from day one when I joined cinema, when I was very young, at the age of 17. So finally, this particular script, as I told you, when I read it, I decided, okay, I'm going to stop everything, no television hereinafter. And I made a very strong decision where career is concerned. You have a very kind of cozy, very comfortable life when you are doing television. Television is, it's there, in an air-conditioned environment. Studios, it's mostly indoors all right. But I know, being an assistant director on films, that how difficult it's you to, go out on location. But my passion was there, so I decided, okay, stop television, and I'm going to make this film. And I took that decision and made the film. That's the story.
So this is your debut film. So yeah. As a debutant, as a first-time filmmaker, did you face any difficulty, industrial difficulty, to be able to make your first film? any experience which you would like to share with us when you were struggling to make this film?
I think that's a great question because I thought, being in the industry so long, being an assistant director and also being successful in your profession, in your career, making a feature film as a director won't be a problem, might not be a problem for me. But I realized during the process of the making of the film that when you make others' life or other directors or the other productions happen and make their life easy, but when you direct your own movie, for you to get that same kind of enthusiasm or the same kind of contribution from the rest of the technicians was somewhat to achieve your vision. To achieve your vision, I think it was a totally different experience. So that is number one in where the aesthetics of the film is concerned, the creatives is concerned, how you put your vision into screen. But the biggest challenge was money, the funds. Because when I was working as an assistant director, there were many producers and financiers who was repeatedly telling me, why don't you make a film? You put so much effort onto a film. We will certainly, finance your project. We will certainly, but that didn't happen. When I decided to walk away from my television job and decided to make a film, then all of a sudden I realized that there is no money for me to produce this film. So at one point that I was so much passionate about the project and I really wanted to do this film, I have to mortgage my house to start the productions, to get the initial funds required for the film. So I mortgaged my house, where the only house or the only property that I have, and that is where my family lives.
Yes.
And I took a huge, big decision, I would say, and mortgage the house and raise the initial funds required to make the film. And then only the other two financiers were attached to the production to finish the film.
So you are still making television, also hugely successful on television, even after you made your feature film, and you are continuing in television also with your reality shows. So don't you think it may impact your brand image as a filmmaker, as a feature filmmaker? What is your take on this?
Sorry, if you could kindly elaborate a little bit on what you were.
Yeah, so my question is, you are, even after you made this feature film, you continue to make excellent TV shows as well.
Yeah.
Even now, successful TV shows.
Yes.
So, don't you think it may engage you? Television may take a lot of your time, so that from thinking about making your next film and the time which you could have utilized planning your film.
Yeah, I think, Harsh, making a film takes a lot of time, lot of dedication, and you really have to work on your film. Filmmaking for me is like something like you're going. It's a holy place. It's a kind of a shrine that I really. So between films, I would say, if you take Tanara Tiranga as my debut and between the next project which I'm planning right now, so there's certainly a kind of time that takes for you to develop a project. So all over the world, it's the same. Like we only see the when you look at the biography or when you look at the filmmakers' filmography, you see film 1 on this year, film 2 on this year, But in between those years, maybe 4, maybe 5, maybe 6, there's a lot of things happening where the development is concerned. So television is naturally. How would I how should I tell you? Like I'm in very much demand where television industry is concerned. So whenever they see that I'm not really shooting something or engaged in a project, I get a lot of invitations to produce television, and I produce television because that's the TV takes care of my bread and butter. I mean, that's the simple truth. Otherwise, I would love to be a professional filmmaker and making films one after the other, and but with an industry in Sri Lanka, the kind of theaters we have, the cinema goes, all when you take all that into consideration, we don't have that kind of an industry in Sri Lanka to be a full-time filmmaker. But I would love to.
So there is a question, because you started with theater, so there is a question from our viewer Charu. How is theater direction different from films? I mean, you have directed theater also, now you have transited to films. So how theater direction differs from filmmaking?
It depends on what kind of approach you have when you work with actors. I mean, you cannot define this is how you act in cinema and this is how you act on theater. But for sure, I can tell you one thing, the biggest difference is in theater, you won't get the opportunity to go into various shots and capture the framing or the composition when you watch a theater production that is in the mind of the viewer, the audience. The audience has to decide on which character that you should concentrate on at any given time. And so when you think of in that terms, especially on a huge theater, wherever you are, you have only one composition in. So the acting is a little bit, I would say, is different. The way you express the voice, all that, the modulation, even the volume of your voice. But in cinema, it's totally different. Like in cinema, that you have the advantage of going closer. Even you could go up to a 1 inch. The camera and the subject, you could go much closer, as close as 1 inch, and shoot the actor. So you don't have that kind of exaggerated, elaborated. You won't get that kind of expressions, and you don't expect that kind of expressions from the actor. So that's the kind of where acting is concerned on these two total different mediums. But then again, when you look at on various directors and various cinema, like if you look at Japanese movies by Kurosawa or Nagisa Oshima or even Mizoguchi, all that, because they are the way they behave, the way the dialogues being delivered, that you get a sense of theatrical feeling in those films. So it depends from culture to culture, director to director, how you perceive that your actors to do a certain sequence or to take a character forward. Like for an example, an actor like Toshiro Mifune, he seems like he's acting like is on a stage. But that's 100% perfect, normal, in their culture. So I think it differs from production to production, from film to film. You cannot define, cannot say.
But there is one thing, theater needs much more riyaz than films. Since there are no retakes in theater, it's live. So, what difficulties did you face in films? Because when you transition from theater to film.
Yeah, from transition from theater to film.
Yeah, because in theater there is no retakes.
All right, okay.
You can take retakes. There is so theater performance is live, always live. So you either you perform or you fail. In films you can take retakes.
Mm-hmm.
So when you were transitioning from theater to film, what was your experience? How did you perceive it?
In fact, I did a lot of rehearsals on Tanha Rati Ranga in particular. Before I went on location with all these three protagonists, we were doing our blocking sessions. So I had about 3 to 4 months working with them very closely, rehearsing them. Because I wanted to, as I told you earlier, there was a lot of budget restrictions. So on location time, I was trying to save on location, on lot of time by rehearsing with them. But then again, theater is something like, it's a very kind of live medium, because it cannot go wrong any time, because it's improvisation and it's always live. If you make a mistake on one performance, you can always correct it in the second the performance, or the following day, or the following week. There are theater productions have been showing for 30, 40 years sometimes continuously, But film doesn't have that advantage. Once you can it, you can it. So I think that's the difference, Harsh. You may go up to many number of takes you want to, but once you okay a particular shot, that shot will be there in the film forever. But in theater, as you said, theater is also can have many kind of retakes. That retakes not happens in a day, but performance after performance after performance, you can take your theater production into perfection, the way you want it, the way you want to develop it, or even the way you want to rewrite it, you can rewrite theater. That's it happens all the time. That's how even Shakespeare's text, which has been written, long time ago, 450 years ago, is still being reinterpreted or interpreted in a different way, even in modern costumes. The Romeo Juliet text, we reinterpret on theater, on stage. It's a kind of a retake that you keep on interpret the same text onto different contexts, in different settings. So cinema is once you've done, once you can the shot, that is going to remain forever. You have no way of changing it.
Okay, and since now we are doing this South Asian Film Festival, I wanted to know, have you followed works of any filmmaker from other South Asian country other than Sri Lanka? Be it Pakistani filmmaker or Indian filmmaker, Bangladeshi or Nepali. So any filmmaker from other countries influenced you?
There are many South Asian filmmakers who have influenced me, and the works that I really, admire, like, love. To begin with, Satyajit Ray.
Yes.
That Satyajit Ray has been a huge influence I think I don't have to elaborate. From Pathar Panchali, all his films we have been exposed and we have been studying like it's like classroom films for us. So Sachit Ray is one filmmaker and Shyam Benegal and Adur Gopala Krishnan. These are all
Yes.
from India. Um, and also filmmakers from South Asian filmmakers. I have not been exposed very much to the Bangladeshi cinema, but certainly India. Certainly, India has a huge influence, and of course, Southeast Asian. If you take Southeast Asian, I have been very much influenced by filmmaker like Wonka Wai. So and Veera Setukal. Uh, so I think when it comes to influence from cinema, the masters of Indian cinema had made a huge impact on my life as a filmmaker. Starting from Satyajit Ray to even recent, I saw a recent movie called a Malayalam movie called Kumbalangi Nights.
Okay.
That was a very recent film, 2019 film, and I think that film is amazing.
Really.
So it doesn't matter as long as from masters like Satyajit Ray, even a film like Kumbalangi Nights, which was made in 2019, it's amazing when you see the talent. So South Asia, yes, it has been always a very huge influence and also been a big inspiration as well.
Traveled to India ever?
Sorry?
Have you traveled to India ever before?
Yeah, many times, Harsh, I've been traveled to India because mostly it's related, it's work related. Like we didn't have most of the post production was happening in India.
Okay.
Where the laboratory work, the processing during the before the digital era, even the sound mix, all that was happened. So there were many. I have lost the count, which I have visited. The number of times I have visited India.
So suppose there is a concept of doing a South Asian cinema, a real South Asian cinema, where filmmakers from all South Asian countries, most of the South Asian countries collaborate and create a joint film. Would you be interested for such project? Do you think such project can become successful, and would you be interested to explore such an idea?
I think certainly yes. That is how the cinema has to evolve in this era, because it doesn't belong to a particular country, or that thinking has gone. I mean, so if you have collaborators from not only from South Asia, I would say even if you take it from other countries also, if they collaborate, you will have a product where you can reach bigger audiences. So yeah, that's something, I mean, really we should really look for. Like India has so much to offer in terms of talent, in terms of the infrastructure, and also where the audience is concerned. So if you take China and if you take India together, that you have half the globe there, half the population of the globe is in these two countries, and I think collaboration is something that will take cinema to the next level, and unknown little directors from Asia, South Asia can reach a wider audience with that kind of collaborations.
Okay. And so there is a question from Mr. Vineet Chopra. He says, what are the future prospect of a filmmaker in Sri Lanka? He's asking for a future prospect of a young filmmaker in Sri Lanka.
I think that is something a prospect when you think of in anywhere in the world. If you take it, filmmaking is one of the most if you even in a even if you look at an industrial point of view, or even if you look at it as a way of self-expression, I think that's totally in the hands of the filmmaker. I mean, nobody cannot make you or your film being identified, or someone will, simply take your film and promote it. So prospects in terms of that, if your film, however much a little or small film it may be, I'm talking in terms of budget, in terms of crew, in terms of if your film is a real gem, it will certainly will go. It will travel. So it all depends on what you create. Being a commercial film director, making cinemas for the mainstream cinema is a different ball game altogether. But mainstream cinema prospects also, that also depends on the kind of the film you make, the actors attached to it, the production company, and all that huge mechanism. But if you really wanted to become a filmmaker who, as I told you, like however much a small film it may be, if it is a real gem of a film, that film will travel because the world has opened up. Now you don't have to go behind distributors, or you don't go behind theater owners to show your film. There are many platforms that have been opened up, where even the numbers, if you take numbers, the numbers are so much higher on those platforms like Netflix, for an example, or all the other windows. There are many filmmakers who are showing their movies on those platforms, and it's simply based on the credibility of the film. So I think you most importantly, you have to be a filmmaker who really use your medium as a self-expression and touch the people's hearts. That film will travel. So prospects are in your hand, the filmmaker. It is very unlike you cannot compare the situation before the digital era and now. Before, yes, it was totally different. But in this era, you can certainly show your film. You have ready-made platforms to show that film, as long as you have made a film. So it all depends on what you make. What is your film is all about.
We are, as you know, we are trying to create a collaborative platform for South Asian filmmakers from across South Asian countries, a digital collaborative platform. That's what we envisage to create through these efforts. Do you think if such a platform fructify, it may help cinema industry in Sri Lanka also to grow exponentially? If such collaborative platform is created?
Certainly, it will help. For an example, if you really first concentrate on collaborative cinema and also a platform to show them. Now, during the lockdown, I think we all know, there was a very successful film festival on online. We are one. So all the major film festivals was representing on that film festival, and I think audiences all over the world had a huge opportunity to watch films where they normally will not get an opportunity to see. Now, I think the pandemic, the COVID-19, opened up that uh, which we thought that we those who really privileged will go to Cannes or go to Tribeca or go to Berlin or Locarno. But with this online film festival, all the films came onto online, and every one had an opportunity to just watch those films. So collaborating films in Asia and the way the world is changing, the especially the way that cinema is being watched. What will happen if it is goes online for further another 2 years, 3 years for the world to come back? These online film festivals become the normal. So in that context, I think collaboration, if you do collaborate and if you make good films, I think you have a great chance of exposing your work to the world, not only in terms of audience, but also in terms of revenue.
Yes.
For you to get that kind of revenue, if you get exposed yourselves, get participated yourself in that kind of online virtual film festivals. That is why your effort is, has to be commended, has to be backed up, and we have to support Harsh. However much smaller may be your audience this time, but you will certainly will keep on doing this, because ultimately we don't know at what kind of a state the global is right now. Now I heard today that in Australia, Melbourne has been locked down again completely, and it has been called a disaster uh, in Melbourne, where the pandemic is concerned. And when you look at the superpowers like America or Brazil, even India, the neighbor, the way it is affecting but despite all this, cinema has to go on. The audiences have, the more they are is the more they are not allowed to go outside or in a lockdown or whatever word you may call it. Ultimately, the cinema is something that people all wanted to watch. So in that context, films, through collaboration, if we make it, if we really committed to do that, those things, the collaboration, all those things are being discussed during film festivals, during seminars, but it never happens. It very seldom it happens, very rarely it happens, because there's no organization, or there is no at least 2-3 people get together and wanted to really make it happen. It's very difficult. You know how much it's very difficult for you to get this festival going.
Absolutely.
Just to show finished products on an online platform, finished products. But to make a film in collaboration is a but I'm here being very positive and also supporting your idea 100%. Go for it, and we will certainly from Sri Lanka will always be there, and we will collaborate, definitely.
Very nice, sir. Thanks for this support and your wholehearted support. Sir, I wanted to understand, like actors, many a times actors wants to improvise on a script which is given to him or her. The director gives a script, a line, to actor wants to improvise on his script. Many a times directors do not want their actors to improvise. They want actors to stick to what is given in writing. What is your take? What is beneficial? Allow actors to improvise, because sometimes directors think that if actors are improvising, then their idea, the director's vision may get diluted or may get affected. So, what is your take? Improvisation is good, or there should be limited improvisation?
Then again, I think it depends on the director, depends on the kind of script and the kind of film you're making. Because if you let improvisation where the narrative is concerned, where the structure is concerned, you can let an actor or an actress to do certain changes or certain improvisations. But then again, it's a director's call. You cannot say, you cannot do improvisation, or you have to stick to your lines. You have to stick to because it's all depends on the kind of film you're making. Like, if you're on static shots and you are making different setups, which is all pre-designed in the director's head, then you might as well have to get your relationship with the actors to stick on to what you want in certain given frame, given dialogue. But then again, if your approach is different, like you have your handheld camera, and you improvise your shot while the actors improvise, they are acting is also a kind of way of making films. So you cannot exactly precisely say. It depends on the film you make. If you take Tannarathi Ganga, the film that you are going to see in a while, is also been there. A lot of you will have a sense of, while you are looking at the film, that it has been improvised, but it is not improvised. It has been, as I told you, has been rehearsed in a air-conditioned environment long before we went on location. The camera movements, the way that actors move, but there are many long takes that runs into 4, 5, 6 minutes continuously. So you get a feel of that it has been improvised. So it's a creative decision. I mean, it is not something yet concrete. You say, no, you stick to my dialogues, you stick to, this is my lens, this is the area from left to right, you cannot move beyond those limits. And so it's individual director's approach to cinema, and also the approach, how you collaborate your actors. It's a collaborative art. I mean, you have to, it's once the chemistry works with everyone, the cinematographer and the actors and the director, because it's not in one person cannot control everything. It is not painting or a poetry. It is not poetry, it is not painting or a novel, it's a collaborative art. So once the camera is on, everything will be, will take its own shape, and there's a certain amount of orchestration that will happen. But you make sure that every note that you play in a particular shot, like if you take music for an example, right? So every note in every movement of music is being orchestrated. But then again, at that particular moment, how a player play the violin or play the saxophone is a total different thing. So improvisation happens. Even though you have written the notes, had been given all the notations to a musician, when it happens live, it takes its own interpretation, own improvisation. Cinema is like that. So the relationship or the orchestration, the understanding between a cameraman and the actors and the director is like something will happen in a concert, in an orchestra, when music happens. And cinema happens, that magic happens, only during the take. In that particular moment, when you do the take, no one has the control. Each and everyone will have their own, But if you are not satisfied, as you said in the beginning, you can always go for the retake. But retaking, the more you do, sometimes you tend to lose the magic. It's a decision, it's a big call. I mean, it's all, you have to decide.
Sir, I wanted to ask next question. We know that South Asian cinema has its own distinct identity, which is inspired from our ancient folk tales, folk traditions. And our South Asian cinema is full of music, dance, which we don't see in European cinema or even Hollywood, American cinema. So we have a distinct identity, our rituals, our marriages, everything has a lot of dance, music, believe in celebration.
Mm.
This identity is not visible in European or other cinemas. And likewise, we also focus a lot on melodrama, emotions, play with emotions, melodrama.
Mm.
And our South Asian cinema has also used all these techniques for past many years since cinema started being produced in South Asia.
Mm-hmm.
India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, all South Asian countries I'm talking.
Mm.
Nowadays, for past 5 to 10 years, for past few years, I'm seeing that our Indian cinema, South Asian cinema is getting more inspired from European style of filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
Even songs are now not lip synced. Songs appear in the background.
Mm.
Story is progressing and song appear in background. Nowadays, I'm seeing this difference in our South Asian cinema.
Mm-hmm.
I think in Thana Rathiranga also you used that technique a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to know your take on this, our South Asian style of cinema making, which is now getting influence from European or other cinema, especially European cinema. And your view about our style of cinema making, South Asian style of cinema making.
Yeah, I think this is something. How? Let's say with the digital era, with all these communication tools and this, the so-called device in your hand, the mobile phone. So I think the globe has come into one kind of village that you doesn't feel anymore, whether you're an Indian, whether you're a Sri Lankan or a Maldives, from Japan, from France, wherever you call it, it's all you carry everything in your hand now. There's no restriction. As I told you, we at one stage in our life, if it is Indian cinema, you have to go and watch Indian cinema, and you have to wait for an occasion to watch the cinema, that kind of cinema. For an example, like Satyajit Ray, all his rare films, Patar Panchali or Aparajito, Kusansar, Charulata, Mahanagar, the list goes on and on and on. So we used to have film festivals organized by various film movements and go and watch them. If it is Akira Kurosawa, then all his great works being screened in a single festival, so that's how we saw these films like Rashomon to Dodeska, then Darzu, Sala, all those great works by even Seven Samurai. But now, all of a sudden, I mean, you don't realize it, but you cannot hang on to your dear culture or your dear values or even, ceremonies now, because it has been hopelessly blurred into one another. Sometimes you watch content on these handheld devices, not knowing or unintentionally. You don't want, but you open up and you go for one thing, and then you come across something else. I think this has influenced the world, the filmmakers, irrespective of their age, irrespective of their cultural upbringing or their thinking, that you got yourself exposed onto this digital phenomenon which is happening. And that has done a lot of, I would say, good to the medium of cinema and any other medium, any other media which related in where you express yourself in terms of image and sound has evolved into a different level. So storytelling then again has crossed all those borders, with or without you knowing it. But if someone is trying to hang on to or restrict himself to, I know I will make films only about my country or about my traditions or about our values, I think he or she or a filmmaker, I think it's a something that you have to think twice, because however much, as you said, however much those influences from Europe or from America or from wherever it is, if your film is rooted in your country, if it is about your own people, if it is about your own country, then naturally that will be rooted in your country. But then again, that story becomes universal, because nothing could happen. What I have, for an example, if you take the Anara Tiranga, in that particular story, that didn't happen anywhere in the world. Because on that particular day, on the 19th of May, which, became an end to a certain so-called, I don't want to give interpretation of the film before you look at it, but that particular incident that happened on that day on Sri Lanka, and when three friends decides to go to a forbidden land, which has been forbidden for 30 years, is only happened in Sri Lanka. And it is Sri Lanka. It could be happening in any other country like Afghanistan or Iran or wherever, where the war is, where the war was. But then again, this particular incident, it happened in Sri Lanka. You tell a story which is rooted in your country, which happened in your country. Then again, when you look at it, when you relook at it, knowingly or unknowingly, you have made that film with a lot of other taking a lot of other inspirations, styles, which is existing in your hand today, which comes from various social media content, various films. For an example, your film festival right now can be watched by anyone who is traveling in a bus right now.
Absolutely.
So I think the more you rooted in your country, the more you tell your own stories of your country, of your people, and those stories will become universal. So when they become universal, I think your storytelling styles also have now become universal. So I don't think no filmmaker will intentionally try to be international, or also try to be, try to secure or try to stick on to values and try to highlight the values. I think the world has become one. World was never one before the pandemic, I would say. In our generation, due to when you were locked down, everyone was locked down due to one single pandemic. Then only we realize this world is only one world. You don't need many things. You only need simple 3 things in life to survive. Like if you talk about survival, just good clean water, good air to breathe, oxygen, and some little food, anything to eat, and that will keep your sanity, the family together. I think if we can have that, if we have that insight, cinema can go a long way. There will be much more interesting cinema to come, Harsh. Trust me. There will be much more interesting cinema in post-corona pandemic in the world to come. And we will all witness that.
Sir, I wanted to understand from you, now our entertainment industry is hugely dependent on digital, solely dependent on digital platforms.
Mm.
Do you fear, many people fear that it will destroy our feature industry, our theater industry? What do you think about this? Exhibitors are getting losses.
See, what I'm thinking here is, if you look at it, the experience of cinema is that you watch cinema inside a theater. It's all dark. The experience that you walk into cinema, the 3 bells, the 3rd bell, the screen opens, and that experience cannot be replaced. It will be never replaced with the generation who have experienced it, witnessed it. So then again, how are we going to face this if it's going to be there for long, this pandemic? Then there should be a solution that how you make cinema live, how you make cinema going, how you keep the medium and the industry live. All the other things, the losses that make by the exhibitor, by the cinema owners, those are, it's not only about cinema. It's about every industry.
Right.
If you look at aircrafts, there are hundreds of aircrafts have been, just idling in airports. All the major airports. If you take it hotels, there are thousands of hotels in all over the world, have been just closed down. So, but having said all that, you can traveling, all that can wait. But as a human being, your so-called entertainment, that cannot be stopped. The storytelling, the urge for man to listen to a story or tell a story, both from the day one is still there. So it won't, like Robert McKee said, the great screenplay writing guru, he says his mother asked him, what do you want to become? He said, I want to become a dentist. Then she has told, what will happen if all the people, everyone, if their problems are over, where, tooth decaying or whatever is, then what are you going to do? Become a storyteller. It's not going to stop. That is what his mother said. And rest of the story we know. He became, the story. So the storytelling, whether it is Romeo and Juliet or from Bharatamuni to Shakespeare to Kalidas to James Cameron, or even Bong Joon-ho, who did Parasite, the storytelling is being continued. So the storytelling has to continue. So everyone has to put their heads together and decide on how you take this industry forward. There is no crisis. The crisis is made, the crisis or everything is made in our heads. We should know there is a solution. And that solution is to come up from your comfort zone, not to be too complacent in this crisis. And there is a solution. The solution is that anyway, to go digital and make that happen until a day comes where you and I, everyone can again walk into that darkened, huge screen and watch the movies. Until then, there is a solution. That is what digital platforms are. That is what you are doing right now.
We all are waiting for that day to return when we can walk in again to theater.
Precisely.
Sir, you made Who Wants to Be Millionaire in Sri Lanka, in Sri Lankan version of Who Wants to Be Millionaire. Did you see Indian version Kaun Banega Crorepati, which was hosted by Amitabh Bachchan? And did you ever meet Amitabh Bachchan or followed Indian version? And so what was your experience in creating Who Wants to Be Millionaire in Sri Lanka?
Yeah, the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire in Sri Lanka, the franchise, it's a franchise version. So you get the license from the copyright holder. So when I initially negotiated for Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, it was owned by Sony Pictures, Cellular Films. Cellular Films is the one who collaborated in making Slumdog Millionaire film. But then they sold the rights to Sony Pictures, and then ultimately when we got the franchise, it was owned by Two-Way Traffic. So part of the making process, part of the franchise to get into that international standard, that I have to attain the recordings in UK. For 1 week, I had this privilege of studying everything pertaining to the production, and finally I spent another week in Mumbai with that great actor Amitabh Bachchan, witnessing myself and get myself trained in producing Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. That was in Mumbai. It was handled by Siddharth Basu, production company, Synergy Productions.
Exactly.
Yeah, Siddharth Basu, and I met that great man as well, one of the top television producers in the Asian region. Of course, an exceptional human being, and Amitabh Bachchan, great Amitabh Bachchan. I have a beautiful memory. When I went for training to London, when I got in, there was a car waiting for me, sent by the production company. So it was a Mercedes, and so when I got into the car, the driver who was driving, he was a huge British guy. From airport to the hotel, he was telling me, someone called Amitabh Bachchan. He asked me. I just kept quiet, and he said, I took him from this airport because when Amitabh ji came to London for the production for the same purpose, for get himself familiarized with the production of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, he has gone in this same car. So I said, yes, of course, Amitabh Bachchan is someone, not only me, the whole world knows him, and it's such a privilege that you know Amitabh Bachchan. I, of course, know him from the day one, but for you to know him and remember him. So I think that is my experience of producing the franchise version of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire in Sri Lanka.
How was the response in Sri Lanka of this show?
It was phenomenal. I mean, it's like it's the same thing that happened in India. Like when in India, it relaunched the career of Amitabh Bachchan as well. he's I would say the second career, like his comeback happened through Kaun Banega Crorepati.
Exactly.
And India went on to a virtual standstill when KBC is being broadcast. It became such a big phenomenon. Number two, that KBC also changed the entire communication landscape in India.
Yes.
The telecommunication infrastructure has to be developed. Many exchanges in India in remote areas also got burned because of they couldn't handle the number of calls, the response it had. Similarly, it did the same thing in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka was, just this program was launched. I tried to launch it in year 2000, but it only realized in 2010. So it took almost a decade from the conception, from the idea to it's really hit on the television stage. So within those 10 years, from SMSs to IVR, the interactive voice response, where you get how you qualified yourself to be on the show starts from there. And so all those telecommunication infrastructure also it did a lot of good. These reality TV shows, the two shows that I did previously, that is Sirasa Superstar, which was SMS based, and Kaun Banega Crorepati or Buddha Lakshapati is based on IVR. And finally, I did another program called Hirusta, which is totally based on the voting will happen through an app, a mobile app. So people vote live through the app, and you could see the screen pricing.
Yeah.
So that is also a franchise version of Rising Star, which is an Israeli format. India also has the same similar program franchise version running as Rising Star. So I think that is what television could do to make people's lives better.
Yes. Sir, how are you spending your pandemic time for past 4 months? How have you spent your time, and what is next you are planning? What is the next project you are planning or working upon?
I think pandemic time was one of the most, I would say, enjoyed the period, because you never get that sort of real sense of timing unless you are locked down. Otherwise, you are in a rut that you will go to sleep on a certain time, then you wake up, you get into your car, you spend 1.5 hours in the traffic, then so all that the so-called rut was, all of a sudden it stopped. And then I realized, there is so much time in a day. And for me, my personal experience is I'm really, it was a kind of a realization that you could do so many things in a day. So I spent my time, a lot of time, and I thought, 1.5 hours to Colombo, 1.5 hours back from Colombo to home. That 3 hours, you could finish 10 chapters in a book. In those 3 hours, you can watch 2 movies.
Yes.
So all that is bonus, and I watched a lot of movies which I wanted to, which I haven't seen, and there are movies which I wanted to see again and again and again. So all those time was spent reading books, listening to music, and also watching movies. And at the same time, through Zoom, I was developing with my team the next project I am going to do. To answer your question, the second part of your question, the next project which I'm planning is it's not only a film, it's going to be a transmedia project where you develop the project on all the platforms, like starting from social media, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and then you move on to from the initial social media, you move on to YouTube series, and finally the YouTube series will culminate into a film.
Really?
Yes.
Very innovative.
So it's in Sri Lanka, of course, it's the first time that kind of a project is happening. Like for an example, now Parasite, on the success of Parasite, now they are making a television series on it.
It's on Parasite, the same concept.
Right, so HBO has commissioned, if I'm not mistaken, to do a TV series. So this is the other way around. Like, you know, you start from social media, you build your characters, the incubation, the road testing will happen on social media, in Facebook. Then those characters will then evolve into a TV series, into a YouTube series.
Right.
And that YouTube series will finally go into a TV series. And those characters will finally evolve and cross their paths in a film.
It's very interesting concept. But it's a very long cycle, I think.
It is.
Yes.
It is. It is. So the media has evolved so much. Why not? Why you want to stick to a film, just a film? Why cannot you think beyond? Why cannot you? Why? Like you said. So until the world is back to normal, this is our new normal. In this new normal,
yes,
you can only watch cinema, you can watch stories only on the digital platform. So go for Instagram TV, go for YouTube, go for Facebook, and then the domestic tool is your television. So by the time you finish your TV series, the world will be back to the norm. Hopefully.
You can also create a game on the characters meantime.
Definitely. A game, and also finally it could also become a comic book as well.
Absolutely. Lot of prospects.
A lot of platforms, you know, multi-platforms. You could really tell a story, and with the same characters, it will be different approach, different stories, and different experience on each and every platform.
Yeah. Sir, now this is the time for the screening of the film. Guys, so let's start the film. Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks for being with us. It was very interesting to talk to you and interact with you. And we hope that we'll again interact sometime. And we'll keep in touch and contact and create the platform which we are talking about, the South Asian cinema platform. Thank you, sir. Thanks for being with us. It was a delight.
Wish you all the best. Thanks a lot, Harsh. Yes, Harsh.
Yeah, welcome again.
Thank you.
So I wanted to ask, this script was written, the treatment is given on the backdrop of fallout of Tamil Tigers and liberation of Jaffna. And then you talk about the new evolving norms in the society. Could you elaborate how this idea came, and how did you germinate this entire plot?
It was originally written by the two actors. Out of the three, the two actors, one is Sarath Kotalawala, the other one is Kumara Thirimagura, who is the tuk-tuk driver. The other one is the handyman in the film. So they brought me this first draft of the script, which they have written immediate after the Prabhakaran was captured in Vellamulla Vaikal in 2019, 2009 rather, sorry. So they brought me this script and I read it. So I really got excited because I really like the story, the narrative, and most importantly, how these, because there was so much waiting to go to this forbidden land, which was not, for the last 30 years, because of the war that no one was, really wanted, had the uh, opportunity to go there, and so that was there in back of everyone, that some land, some promise land, everybody wanted to go.
Yes.
So that is how I got this inspiration to do this one.
So was it challenging or smooth to shoot in Jaffna? Even to get permission from government, because that time when you shot, it was still a sensitive place. Even after the fallout of the Tamil tigers, it was still a sensitive place even at that time. So was it easy to get permission from government to shoot there?
Yeah, it was such a challenge, because after there was war for last so many years, there were no places to stay. The infrastructure was not there for a film crew to go and work. The landmines have not been cleared 100%. And but I got the permission. Got it with a lot of. We had to go through a lot of homework, a lot of paperwork, all that. The permission was granted, but then when we went on the location recce, we realized it was a really a challenging task, because there was no accommodation.
Oh, really?
So in a remote area for a film crew, about 70, 80 people to stay. So we have to put up everything from the mosquito nets to beds to shelter. Everything has to be constructed, and we did all that because of the location, because that location have not been really captured in a motion picture, in a feature film in that context. So
Yes.
it was, I would say, untouched kind of virgin land, and that can be seen in the film, in the landscape. So because of the story and the visual impact, all the other infrastructure needed a film crew to stay and shoot in that area. The production team has to set up everything. It was challenging.
Even myself, we got to see Jaffna for this first time in my life. Many of us got to see Jaffna for the first time through your film, because when your film came, it was very recently, at that time, got freed, liberated. So we got a sneak peek into the locale of Jaffna through your film.
So Harsh, you are saying, I mean, you saw the Jaffna through this film for the first time.
For the first time, yes.
Right, okay. That's great. Yeah.
I think many people would have seen Jaffna through your film for the first time.
Because while I was shooting in Jaffna, in Puneri, to be precise, there was one of the very known checkpoints there. So while the crew was setting up the shot, there was few soldiers there manning the checkpoint. So I walk up to the soldiers and I was talking to them. And I asked them, now how many people have visited since the end of the war.
Yes.
How many people have visited so far Jaffna? Is you have the still you have the same kind of kind of crowd coming on a daily basis. Then he gave me a nice answer. He said the soldier. He told me, Sri Lanka has a population of 22 million.
Okay.
He said so. Even I mean, there are places in Sri Lanka where are known monumental historical sites where people have never reached, people have never visited. So he
Yes.
told me in that context, you will see that it will take years for people to come and visit Jaffna, and
Yes.
also people won't be having that kind of money to travel. So I think in that context, the film was something which is very unique because you can really, like we do with all the other movies we see globally, that you can just be there in any film in that location, whether it is Mexico, whether it is Argentina, whether it is America, Japan. Similarly, within the country, you have this opportunity that you can, because it's a film about internal migration, where three friends from Colombo traveling to Jaffna. I think audience had the opportunity to participate in that journey,
Travel with them.
travel with them. Yes.
There is a question from audience. Vineet asks, Nilendra sir, this movie stands on the borderline of artistic cinema and commercial cinema. Was that intentional, and how did you plan to give it such a treatment?
Very interesting question, Harsh.
Vineet
I think
asked.
I think when we talk to each other before the screening, I was telling you, there was nothing intentionally done. The truth is, the answer is that the film itself has this style. When it was planned and when we were in the pre-production stage, but a lot of people have this observation and they call it, it's like kind of, it has some artistic and also commercial. I don't think so. I don't think filmmakers make films in my context. I don't do that. I just make the film. I'll be as much as possible honest to the film, to its characters, to its story, and the universe of the film. I think the film itself will have to take how you're going to do the film and how the story has to be, so all that a natural process which comes to you when you are truthful to your characters and to your story.
It's such a beautiful film, and you have given it such a humanistic ending. The ending climax is so humanistic, and you have shown the conclusion which is coming from within. It's not external. Conclusion is not external. He's not getting punished by police or something. I mean, he's getting punished of his own deeds.
I still trying to understand, that I shot this film by, by myself, and I mean, create this film, directed this film, and still each and every time when I watch the film, I cannot hold my tears.
Yes.
I don't know why. I know this is, this all the everything was set up by me. The shots, the everything it's a film after all, and you did it. But to really I cannot hold my tears or being emotional when the film ends. So I think I rather stop there, because rather than trying to find answers for that, when you become an audience, when you're an audience, no matter what, forget everything else. The being a filmmaker, your theories, your everything behind that, everything that you can put aside when you become an audience, a member of the audience, and if that film can touch your heart, I think that matters most.
We empathize with each character. The best part is none of them is villainic. I mean, and none of them is antagonist. Even if what they are doing in as a character in this film, empathize with them, what they are doing, and we flow with them, with the character.
I think it's like you said, the normal structure of storytelling, and you said it right. Like you have a protagonist and you have an antagonist. All that, you know. This film is totally going away from that.
Right.
Totally going. I think that is one of the reasons that I really fell in love with the script and the story, because it is like the human beings, the small things that we do that make all of us, you know, human beings, not knowing that we are doing that, you know, not aware of, you know, the small things that we do that takes such a long way and totally change the lives of those characters. A very small incident. Now, for an example, when this three-wheeler driver, when he had everything in this world to hold that, you know, the girl who came on his way, the love that he could, you know, hold from, he just let that go, and he possessed this, he really goes behind this revolver.
Yes.
Going behind this, and he takes it rather than, you know, connecting with the girl. And then the story takes a dramatic turn. That small decision that we do as human beings. The rest of the story totally relies on that little decisions, not knowing.
There is a question from a viewer I have received. The cinematography of this film is exceptional. However, the trivia listed on IMDb says that it was an early experience of the cinematographer, DOP. Do you want to share any story about how were the shots planned and executed?
Harsh, if you could kindly do me a favor, if you could kindly repeat the question, because I was trying to, there was an audio error. I couldn't hear it properly. Sorry.
Sure, sir. So the question is asking, the cinematographer of this film is exceptional. The trivia listed on IMDb says that it was an early experience of cinematographer. I think it's one of his first film. Do you want to share any story about how were the shots planned and executed?
Right. Okay. Got it. Yes, most of the crew members, the key players of the film, they were all first timers, Harsh.
Really?
The cinematographer I chose, that was his first film.
Yes.
Music directors, the two music directors, two sisters, Gayatri and Anupa, their first film. The screenwriters, the first screenplay. For me, it was first time director. Yes. And the assistant director was a first time assistant director. So there's a lot of freshness and a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of energy also was there in the film. So when it comes to this question, it was a creative decision that we took, that we will definitely shoot the film completely handheld. And that was a big decision. There was not a single shot in this film have been shot on a tripod. Not a single shot. So right throughout the shoot, the camera with the magazine. It's like, 19 kilos, and so he was holding the cinematographer was holding the camera, and each and every soon after the shot being taken, there's someone who was always there to hold the camera, because it was so heavy, and we used a lot of long takes.
Okay.
So, but so there was a lot of passion, and there's a lot of commitment also. So all these shots, as I told you in the previous session we had, was pre-planned.
Yes.
It was all planned inside when we were blocking the film, rehearsing the film in Colombo. And then everybody knew, from the actors to the cinematographer to the rest of the crew, how they will move, and how the positioning of each and every character in a given shot. So that was a sketch which we all knew, and it was storyboarded there. Based on those rehearsals, it was storyboarded completely, and so we had our visual reference, everything. But when you look at the film now, even when I look at the film today, you feel like it's like unplanned, or it is, you would say, very authentic. You don't feel the presence of the camera. And I'm wondering now how we shot this film. I think that's the beauty of filmmaking. I mean, you become mesmerized by your own film, and it's a kind of a a journey that you could always go through, and take it as an inspiration for you to move forward when you go forward. So the cinematography, though he's a first time, I don't think the first time or the experience, lack of experience, is nothing that you need in this industry. All you need is, I would say, yes, of course, you have to be talented. But talent plus talent, everybody is talented. You need very little bit of talent for you to survive in this industry. But perseverance. Perseverance is the word, because there was so much sweat in those. If you look at the film, if you look at the landscape, and it was 40 Celsius, burning hot sun, and in the morning, by 9 o'clock, you get that kind of temperature, and you go until sometimes 3 in the morning shooting night sequences as well. So perseverance plus your talent, I think, equals, what is this film is. It's for any youngster who is coming to industry. I think you should have loads of perseverance. So I would like to acknowledge that I made this first film, taking all the other department heads who contributed to the film were first timers.
Sir, you have created an excellent cinema. It was a first time. Most of the people for whom it was a first time film, feature film. It's excellent film, and it's a milestone in the South Asian cinema. It's one of the milestone in our South Asian cinema history. And I think this is the best concluding remark which you have given us, and a hope for young filmmakers who can collaborate with each other. All young first timers can collaborate and can create a world-class cinema. This hope which you have given to our young filmmakers.
Thank you so much, Harsh. Thanks a lot for.
Thank you from heart, from our heart, for giving us so much time and giving us your film, so that people across South Asia could watch it. India, Nepal, Bangladesh, everywhere we could watch it. Pakistan, and we hope to travel together in this journey for creating a larger South Asian market network of filmmakers. Thank you, sir. Thanks for joining us today. Hope to
You're most welcome. You're most welcome, and we will also from Sri Lanka, from our end, will always give you the needed support. We'll give you that encouragement, and I wish that you can have your vision taking this film festival forward, and also make possible, if you can, the collaboration between the Asian countries, South Asian countries, to take cinema forward. And I thank you once again, Harsh,
Yes.
and the Valley Film Festival for this fantastic effort. All the
Thank-
best.